wait for Brian to give me the look. All right, I'm gonna call back the order of today's meeting. I need a motion to return back to the regular meeting. Mr. McFerrin, second. Ms. Hoteling, what'd I say? McFerrin, sorry, Bill. Just a reminder, please silence your electronic devices, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we do have some additions and deletions. Sue?
For business considerations, 6.23 will be a consent letter for Rhinebeck. 6.24 will be an MOA for the SRP group. 6.25 will be the addition of some RCS courses. Personnel considerations, 7.2 and 7.3 will add some teachers for the regents and for the proctors. 6.17 will be a long-term substitute academic life-based skills teacher. 7.18 will be a special education teacher. 7.19 will be a long-term substitute social worker. 7.20 will be the resignation of a teaching assistant. 7.21 will be a resignation of a special education teacher. 7.22 will be the correction for the pay for the nurses for the RCS Discovery Camp. And 12.1 is the addition of the C&I committee meeting minutes, which will all be reflected in my minutes.
Thank you, Sue. I need the acceptance of the minutes from the July 13th board meeting. Oh, sorry, yes.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Just two?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, this is new,
Those
guys.
objections.
Yeah. Now we need to do an acceptance of minutes for the July 13th board meeting, the July 13th reorg meeting, and then the July 27th special board meeting that was held. Jen, I can't remember her last name, it's awful, sorry. And Ms. Hoteling, I saw a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty. We do not have any awards honors tonight. No hearings and petitions. So I need the business considerations of one or all.
Make a motion for 6.1 through 6.25.
Actually, I'm sorry, we have to
We're
leave.
gonna call out
we have to-
6.6.
6.6.
Okay, so
6.6, we do need to do roll call.
Leave 6.6 out, put everything else in.
We have motion, Mr. McFerrin, second?
Second.
Discussion.
Do we have discussion?
Oh, I had a question about 6.3. What does that mean when it says, it's setting the work days, but I'm not exactly sure what the work days are. Is that what location code 7011
110.
means?
70110 is our ERS code, and we have to establish the standard work day for each of our positions as it's reportable to ERS. We do it every year.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. It just
Yep.
was worded weird.
Sue, did you get Bill and Ed? Okay. All in favor?
Is there any more discussion?
And then, listen. Roll call for 6.6.
You gotta do the.
Okay.
Yeah, make a motion for
Can we-
6.
First, we have to vote on the first one.
We
Everything
already-
except 6.6.
they already- Yep, we already did that. Sue got him, she said. She
Did I
got
just-
him, Bill and Ed.
No, we still have to vote.
We have to vote and say, aye, approved.
Yep, so
All-
just say
All in
I
favor?
said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
they just need time to do it. that's
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Ready, Sue?
Now make a motion for
Yep,
6.6.
I make a motion for 6.6.
Making your own motions?
No.
Motion for 6.6.
Bill, seriously? Second, Bill McFerrin.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Okay, Mrs. Hoteling.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Engel.
Aye.
Mr. Deo.
I have one question
Sure.
here. With respect to the bond financing, I see that there's reference to the project plan as hereinafter defined. I don't know that I've seen the project plan.
Whereabouts are you? What section?
So this is on page 3. The whereas clause about halfway through.
Project plan as here and defined.
That's what was put up to the board. It kind of went over what the project scope was.
Okay, so I think what I saw was there was a listing of projects, including some electrical work, removing the old concession stands and dugouts.
Yep.
But is there an actual project plan?
When you say project plan, as soon as they're done and the architect and the engineers go and they define everything, I don't mean I'm speaking out of turn, I apologize.
We'll be answering equally as qualified, because we'll equally be able to answer the question, so.
Right,
feel
there'll be a
free.
plan for when it will start, how it will go, it goes to SED for approval and facilities planning. It's still in develop. We give you a rough overview of what we're doing, then they design it, they send it to SED, it gets approved, and then there'll be a plan for when it will start and how long it'll take.
A more appropriate word, Mike, is scope. And any district, when they enter into such a plan, writes the scope, the list of potential work in a way that encompasses the essence of it, but it won't purposely will not specifically say, we'll move said wall 1 foot to the left, because what we know is when we open that wall, we're gonna discover asbestos, or there needs to be piping replaced, or it turns out that an addition of a wall was a better choice in order to do the purpose. So a better word is to say scope of the plan, and it's true in every district where you'll see whether they were encounter problems during the plan, they encounter additional work that needs to happen, or there's an overage and they can't complete the work. And Joanne's right. What will happen is after it has been approved by the state and then approved by the board, they will in earnest create the more specific how they're going to
How
address
to,
it.
is correct. with the
So at some point in the future, there'll be a project plan listing out the specific projects
Right.
that will be done and prioritize those projects, you know, where dugouts are versus the electrical work versus the concession stand. We'll see a timeline for when that work is scheduled to be done.
Right.
There'll be certain priorities versus other ones in the event that there's not enough money to complete everything that's envisioned.
Right.
And that will all be put to the board for approval at that time?
No, because the public has already approved it. They approved it in May, and there was a scope, and there was a detailed listing of all the things that they had planned to do. You saw pictures of pieces of it,
Yep.
but then it'll go to the state now, and then we can look at it and all those ideas, so we can prioritize it, but everything that we could be allowed to do is part of that vote and now part of this document. So like, we couldn't now take this, and instead of spending that 2.3 million on the work that we outlined and go build a brand new something, we could, because it would not be in accordance with what the
Right.
voters approved.
So you can't do something that wasn't
Correct.
included, but there may, in the event that there's not enough funds to do everything that was included,
Yep, then we would want to
some work may be
decide.
eliminated.
Correct. And we would
So
have
at
a
what point,
discussion.
at what point will we see where the relative priorities are between all of those projects?
So what happened to the last project is we have our Buildings and Grounds Committee, which is a seated committee that meets on a regular basis, and there are members of the board on there. Aside from that, we had Construction Committee, which was made up of the architect, the GC, the general contractor, Joanne and myself, and who else was on the?
I don't remember.
Yeah, there's usually six or so of us at the table, and then we would in turn, and that, there's a scope of work in there with an expected timeline for each of those things to occur because, Bill Schramm and
Right.
Jason, obviously. And what would happen is, because the work is always in and around the confines of where everybody's living and working, the timelines would be transmitted both to the Buildings and Grounds Committee and to the district so that they would know where and when these things would be occurring. So we'd know, for instance, we're going to be doing irrigation at the playground at Peterby, that during a window of time, we're expected to break ground, we're expected to accomplish tasks and have everything buttoned up. And the other thing that needs to be married to this, in addition to the scope, is what contractors are going to bid on the work. The plan's got to be finalized, contractors have to bid on it, the materials have to be available, and then, the actual thing. So it is extremely multifaceted, but before they scratch the ground, they have a plan and a timeline of what's supposed to, how things are supposed to come forward. And it is shared through Buildings and Grounds. We get regular updates at the board level as well, especially as we, some things were unexpectedly delayed, and we were in remediation. We gave a few presentations, the architects came and did that. So once that is finalized, you will know, we will all know what those timelines look like.
And the only thing I'll add to that is that once we, the architects now, they're designing everything, so they're getting it all ready to submit to SED. That timeline, you know, when years and years ago, it used to be a couple of months. Now it can be anywhere from 3 months to a year and a half with SED and their staffing levels. Once SED approves that project, we have an approval date, the district's allowed then to bid the work. And so at that point in the ballgame, they may have a better idea of what it's gonna come in, so we might wanna do some of it as an alternate. And then when we get all those prices back in, then we will sit down and say, okay, they came in significantly higher, and we as a board would have this discussion with the architect, and he would go through everything, and we could pick and choose at that point with some work with one of the committees or the board as a whole on what pieces of it we wanna do. But we're talking at least, ideally, we'd like to bid in February or March, and that's if the state's on point.
Okay.
So we're
And Joanne,
talking
that's
about the
with all the
spring.
work?
Pardon me?
That's with all the work? Because I was under the impression that some of the work was gonna be done this summer,
It-
and some was gonna be done this fall.
We can only do the work once it's approved by the state, so if they have not, nothing's been approved by the state yet.
Okay. that-
We did have a conversation about as soon as the students left the ground, there were some things, projects that were gonna happen.
That are not related to this project.
Okay.
There were additional
Like
local
school
stuff.
stuff.
Like the,
The pool we're still
Totally separate,
working on,
right.
correct, that is not part of this project.
And the state expedited their approval of that, knowing that it was an emergency. And we were also talking about playground work.
non-electrical stuff,
Yeah,
like
'cause
things that had the lesser.
Right,
review.
because I think they were talking about like, and I'll just use an example, the dugouts,
No, they
because they were prefab, and they
Still-
didn't
right.
need some sort of SED approval, that they could potentially have happened in the fall. The fencing too was something that was talked about as, that didn't need some sort of approval, engineering or something, and that would happen sooner. So that was one of the things that we were, I know when we were talking about this as a smaller project, we're like, okay, there is kind of an ordering in place. Hearing what Mike's question is and hearing that none of that can take place until after SED approves the entire project is news to me.
They do have to approve it, they would have to approve the dugouts, so
Okay.
they would have to do that. They have to approve the demolition of the concession stand.
No, I could have sworn there was something that we were all waiting for the students to leave.
Right.
The
And
pool
we said-
filter.
No, it was something other, because it was something where we said, you'll see a dumpster out there, you're gonna see them starting to move something, I don't know if it was a parking lot, I don't know. There was something that we talked about being visible
I thought it was
as soon as the
I thought it
students
was
left the ground.
concession
I thought it was
stand too,
concession
but.
stand.
Well, we thought we might be able to do the concession stand, we can't do that without SED approval either. It's a building on our property, there's a process that has to go through.
I thought that was approved in the last time.
Yeah,
Nope. That's not
Demolition
the-
of that was not included?
Nope, it's this one.
No, somehow they worked around it. They built a new one and worked around the fact that it was there. For our next board meeting,
Bring John.
we'll build something and put it on the website so the community can see. So to try and waylay some of the confusion, and then I can in turn, obviously, I'll direct you all to that, so you'll be able to see what's there as well. And we can discuss it on the 24th, if you think it's advisable. The reason I'm saying, I'm not just gonna do a presentation on the 24th, because it's the end of the summer, and it's not gonna be helpful at that juncture, but we'll put something together so by the next week we can have something out for the public. And Joanne and I actually heard today, a member of the public who was like, because you're gonna be doing this, this, and this before the season starts, and we're like, no, that's not happening. We know that there needs to be some clarification.
Okay, so I'll vote in favor of 6.6. Although this is a large undertaking for the district, I'm also not convinced that we'll be able to complete everything that was listed in the resolution. There's inevitably overages. In the event that something can't be completed, I do look forward to seeing a list of relative priorities so that we can make sure that we're focusing energy and
Yeah.
money on the things that are most important.
and that was part of our survey that was done also, correct, right? The building and ground
Building-
survey and.
Building conditions.
Thank you.
yeah.
Well, the cost of construction now, even, I know from the housing market and everything, when you're talking about submitting bids and everything in February, it could be a drastic increase in price. I mean,
Correct.
It could go the other way, but 6 months from now, 7 months from now, things could be, most likely will still be drastically different. So it's very plausible that not everything on there
Correct.
will be able to be done.
Yep.
Some.
Sometimes when they anticipate that, they'll bid things as an alternate to know right off the bat so that we can help them scale that down on what we wouldn't want to do. They can build it, they can bid it as an alternate, and then you can add, you can do it if you have the money and not if you don't.
And just for information, within our last building project, we had 3 phases to it. The third phase was the last thing. That got changed significantly based upon what was left for funds. So what was originally planned and what was done was reworked so it could fit within a budget.
And we've also been impacted by the bidding process.
Yeah.
What we thought was gonna come in within a range of A to B, when they unsealed everything, we realized it was just not feasible to be done. Nobody was competitive in what we thought could be accomplished for what we set out, so.
Well, we're hoping our design team this time around is a little bit more on point.
Better than
A
boxes.
few more checks and balances.
So did you?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Bedinati?
Aye.
Mr. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mrs. Molino?
Yes. Did everyone?
We're all good.
Do I have to, we already approved ours.
We're good to go.
All right. Moving on, personal considerations. I need a motion for one or all.
Make a motion for all 7-1 through 7-22.
Anybody have any?
Second first, second first.
Bill? Mr. McFerrin, second.
Discussion?
Discussion?
discussion,
Yeah,
and
hey,
then-
7-7, Miss Cook's leaving?
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. I will tell you, she was an unbelievable resource, at least for my children. So I'm disappointed to see her leave.
Well, on the plus side, Kayla, who's coming in, is a graduate of our high school and has worked as a TA in our district. Her mother works in the district, and she is admirably going to fill those shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying, Bill. And also, I want to acknowledge, but we can't clap yet because we haven't voted,
We haven't
is
done this.
Erin Blair and her very patient family are in the audience waiting for 7.6, so.
Is there any more questions before we second?
Just the 7.9 looks like you got the certification that was necessary.
She did.
Gotcha. And that's why that's back. And 7.12, is that just an extension of a current leave? Is that why it have the longer dates? Okay. All right.
I got a couple too before we
Go
go.
ahead.
7-11
Oh, I
is a
had
new
that too.
position. Is that one that we created recently? Or did that-
Two.
Grounds
more
and
building grounds.
grounds persons.
Last year we did it.
Did that, at one point we had created like half building grounds, half custodial at
Yep.
each elementary.
We did.
Yep.
We still have that?
Yeah, we haven't gotten rid of
And then we
anything.
have 2 more building grounds on top of that?
We
No,
don't-
they are those positions. We had not filled them yet. We
Oh, so
still
this is
have
the
openings.
hiring for a position that we already had?
Yes.
Or we just didn't hire.
So we have not filled it yet.
Gotcha. So it's new position approved a while ago?
Yep.
Correct.
Thought we didn't ever fill those. Okay, I didn't know that.
So there's still one more.
No,
I don't believe so. I think they're
no,
all
we
filled
only
in.
have one part-time that moved into a full-time.
Right.
That's open right now.
Okay, thank you.
Part-time.
So really, it's open position.
Yeah, you're right.
All right.
Yeah.
Unfilled.
Yeah.
7-17, another new position. Why are we hiring a long-term sub and not, is this a COVID thing?
Not certified.
717.
Oh, yeah, this is the fax one.
Yeah, it's
Seven-
COVID.
717 is the
yeah,
17 to 21-year-old program.
Life-based skills.
We did create that position 2 board meetings ago. I'd have to look, but we
Right,
did
but-
create that.
but why
But
don't we-
she is a long-term sub because she has special ed certification in elementary at this point and is working on her secondary. So because she's working with 17 to 21-year-olds, we'd want her to have students with disability certification 7 through 12.
So it's
She doesn't have that. It's a
certification thing.
certification concern.
Which
Gotcha.
she's working on. And once she's completed that, we'll put her on the step that's appropriate.
Similarly to 719 as well, she submitted everything for her certification. It hasn't come through yet, so I foresee that name coming back to the board to go into a probationary position. So it's a certification concern.
Okay, and then the last thing, 7-15, just wanted to call out the retirement of Darcy. We're gonna miss her something
Yes.
terrible.
Missed that.
Yeah.
I've known her for 20 years and she is unbelievable, so
Yep.
Yep.
not sure how we're gonna manage without her, but hope she enjoys her retirement.
She is right now.
She is right.
No. Anybody else? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Aaron!
Thanks for coming and waiting for us.
Nicely done.
That's okay.
Makes us remember.
Moving on, informational items. I don't have to read that.
Nope.
Nope. Special reports.
You got one?
Mr. Reveley's not here, and I don't have anything to report right now. Anybody else on the Board of Education?
CNI met, right?
Oh,
Update, you wanna do it in your section?
Whatever you want to do. CNI members, whatever
Well,
you.
Teddy's not here either. You had your first one? Yeah. You know, it's always a little nerve-wracking for me when we try to get it in at such the 11th hour, but I think this is really exciting, and I think it opens a lot of avenues for growth when it comes to our career pathways. And we've been saying for a long time that if we don't really address the middle school age brackets, that we're missing the mark when someone realizes they want certain offerings as juniors and seniors. So I think this is a really big step towards that, and I'm excited to see how it rolls out. You know, I think it gets a little complicated sometimes with scheduling because there's a little less, they're much more structured in the middle school and making those pieces of the puzzle fit, but they gave us some great visuals to show where this is mapped out, and I'm excited. I think we're looking to have kind of a report out in the first couple of months to see how many take advantage of it and get immersed in it, and hopefully we'll hear more about the whole program, middle school and high school, and kind of bridging it through the year.
I liked the aspect of the career exploration more at the middle school level and the pulling in of what the skills they have and helping them to kind of formulate that, because although it might not be what they pick long term, it can certainly help them with decisions for courses.
And the one course, we have been talking about capstone projects for a while, includes a capstone project as part of the career exploration, which I think was something that we were really excited about. The other thing I think Jenny brought up was, well, what about kids who can't fit into their schedule? And so they're already thinking about how to do this potentially like an online module. So students who aren't able to do it during the school day could do this outside of the school day.
And we're really kind of crystallizing our vision for bringing some of the community members
Yeah,
and
that's
involving
great, too.
them at a younger age in some, you know, pathways and envisioning of what they could do with their lives post-school. So I think there was a lot of good detail in it.
I actually do have one thing, just, and you might be bringing it up too, just some more communication on if there's gonna be, I talked earlier about kindergarten prep and high school prep for freshmen coming in.
Yeah, we have been going back and forth with building principals and teachers as well regarding things like kindergarten welcome start, pre-K slow start, welcome start. I like welcome start a little bit better instead of slow start. And then also transitions as far as those grades going from, Mr. McFerrin. I tried to write Mrs. McFerrin to get feedback. I always ask Mr. McFerrin
I'm kept up to date
on
on
an
all
email.
the
So-
K stuff.
So whenever you need to give feedback in kindergarten, that's. But there should be information coming out this week regarding that and the dates around that. And I know that principals are really excited about having sixth graders come into middle school and ninth graders coming into the high school.
So this will be communication on our internet, or?
It will be.
those
It should be
pamphlets?
most likely two modes. One through the internet. The other one would be welcome letters from principals
Just that,
as
yeah.
well.
All right. You know, that communication is key.
Just in the communication realm, I know that we have done Chromebooks the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
We're in August.
Yes.
And, obviously transportation's big, Chromebooks are big. We're gonna get stuff out as to what the plans are for the different levels, because I know that there's different plans based upon the different levels.
Most students have passed theirs in so they can get updated. There are certain grades that will get, because devices are aging out, they'll actually get new devices. So we're really excited about that as well. I know that 10th graders, 9th and 10th graders are getting touchscreen Chromebooks. I'd have to double check, so don't quote me on that one.
But there'll be a plan to distribute them
Yes.
if there is a plan to distribute them before
Correct.
school starts, that will be communicated and,
It has been for the middle school level for 7th and 8th grade at least.
what's that?
Mrs. Capiz sent out an email saying that August 31st, 7th and 8th graders can come between 12 and 1 to pick up Chromebooks and schedules, so
Good. Good.
I've
So
already
there is-
received that personally.
Good.
I know.
Okay.
Middle school anymore.
Fred, one other thing about CNI, just
Sure.
one of the things we kind of touched on at the very end, and we're gonna keep trying to work on, is also going backwards and looking at some of the things that we've passed in the last couple of years, some of the new initiatives, new classes, and kind of regroup and see how well they were received and whether or not they are keeping up with the demand or the thought that went behind them.
Dr. Bailey?
Hello.
Hi.
The leadership team, and some of them with new members, Jen Murphy, Steve Doran, middle school principal, assistant principal, and Tori DeGoff, and the rest of the team came together these last 2 days to start, to get together the, just as Trish was talking about, the communications for the fall, ensuring that we have information out about the operations that we expect in the opening days. We finished the school year with our staff by having a, I called it the stay opening meeting. We had all these reopening meetings in past years, trying to conceptualize if there's anything from the Department of Health that's going to be relevant. We do not think there is anything that will be relevant or alter our path for an expected, what is a relatively normal opening. We need to tell our families that so that they, and our staff, so they feel confident in coming back and what to expect in that. So that'll be coming out in the next week. We also, to discuss our new teacher, our new staff orientation, which will be in the last week in August. As you've seen, we've appointed a lot of new staff, and we want them to come in and have an opportunity to acclimate to our school and learn more about our processes and programs before they're coming out on the first day with the students. And the last thing that we really focused on today was our superintendent conference days, which are September 1st and 6th. We're doing the Thursday before Labor Day, and then the Tuesday after, and now all of our students will arrive on Wednesday. And we cram a lot in there for our staff, a lot of required trainings, time for opportunity in their classrooms, and faculty meetings and things like that. So our staff will be getting that information in the next week or two as well. I sent out communications about a principal hiring committee for the high school. We accepted Lisa's resignation at our special meeting this past week. Past week. Seems like a year ago. The first meeting of that committee will be tomorrow night. It's a virtual meeting to talk about what we believe our priorities to be for the high school at this time. The last time we hired a high school principal was 6 years ago. So obviously things have changed in our community, and we want to make sure that we're looking for the right person for the right reasons. So we're doing a virtual meeting tomorrow, and then a full day of interviews on Friday, the 26th of August, whatever that Friday is.
Do you have board members?
Is the goal to bring someone in so that there's overlap between Lisa and the new principal?
Correct.
Okay.
If we stay on schedule, if we have candidates that are viable and we do interviews on the 26th, and that means that they would be hired in the first board meeting in September, and they'd be able to give their 30 days, which gives us ample time. Lisa's working through the end of October. So if they are appointed even as late as the 7th of September, even the 14th of September, Sue corrected me, is it the 7th or 14th? Okay. Even if we appoint as late as the 14th, that would give them their 30-day notice. They'd be able to come on the 24th or 23rd and spend a week with Lisa as part of transition. I do invite, we would love to have a couple board members participate if they can. Even if you can't do tomorrow night's our priority setting, it would be great if someone were able to spend the day with us. I'll send another invitation out to the board. If you can break away and spend that time with us on the 26th, that would be beneficial.
I can do the 26th.
What time is the meeting tomorrow?
Tomorrow is at 7 p.m.
Okay.
It's virtual.
Okay.
Would anyone like to participate in that? We also agreed it isn't essential if it's the same person.
I'm happy to participate. I just didn't know if someone who had a high schooler felt more inclined to do it. I
can
only
do
have
the
a 7th
26th.
grader, so.
But I
Okay.
can't do
Investing in the
the-
future.
Well,
That's
true.
right.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
We have some teachers in the same boat. some that are able to do the goal setting and priorities and may not be able to be at the interviews. That's okay. I mean, very frequently, most people are just showing up for the interview and just using their own sense of, you know, what their own priorities are. So this is just an extra thing to help us make sure we're advertising what it is that we want.
You gonna send that link to specific people, or you wanna send that? I'll try and join tomorrow night.
Tomorrow? Okay, great. Thanks.
And I can join that
Is
tomorrow.
here.
I'm pretty
26
sure I
is
can do
here.
it.
Yeah,
It's all
yes.
day.
It's the 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Okay, great. Thank you. Also, Fred reminded me, you were gracious enough to have a special board meeting last week to make sure that we're able to get our new hires in. We will be hiring from now through September 6th. If we are in a position, we know, we're also waiting on some potential resignations, people who have chosen to move out of state or leave. We cannot legitimately hire for them until they've done that. So we do have a little bit of backlogs in some places. So I may be requesting again that we do another virtual meeting because our next meeting's not for 3 weeks. So sometime between now, about 3 weeks. Between now and 3 weeks from now, I may ask your indulgence again to do a virtual meeting so that we can appoint some folks. Remember that anybody who's working somewhere else, most of them have to give 30 days notice. So you see how we're already up against, we're starting school with students on the 7th. So we're already up against pretty crucial timelines. And lastly, I think, our facilities planning committee has been meeting every 3 weeks approximately. We met last week and we have another
Can I
meeting
ask one question
next
regarding
week.
your 30-day notice thing?
Yes.
So if people haven't resigned as of yet, they have to give 30 days notice, we can require them to start the year with us?
We can.
Okay. Again, if you're going to wait and
I know.
to give us notice, I am not opposed to requiring them to come to the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and we have done that.
Okay.
And I have to say, people are understanding, they understand their responsibility.
Okay.
Not all situations are that, not all the
you're-
ones in this case are that easy. We would love it to be, but you're exactly right, Bill, we would hold them to it. We also like transition, if it's possible, we
Right.
want to do transition. The facilities planning committee has been meeting, because we've talked about the $2.3 million project that's going on now, we're thinking about a project 3 or 4 years from now. Planning always starts 3 or 4 years in advance. We'll be meeting again next week. We had hoped that, I mentioned to you the proposal from a local business. Harbor has asked for the potential of purchasing some land in order to, for special use to do a parking lot. It looks like the soonest they'd be able to present is at one of our September meetings. And our plan, and I'm actually glad to have a discussion with you. You know, we felt a little bit rushed if we were trying to do it next week. Our plan is to do that meeting in person with due notice to the community. We talked about it as a facilities planning committee. We would send out an invitation to our community via email and post it on our website. Our residents that are directly adjacent to the property, we would mail to them or do a flyer and deliver it to them because they may not be tuned into our school. And we do a posting in the newspaper, do an article in the newspaper so that they would know there would be a public meeting where this company would present and say what they're going to do with it, what actually the proposal looks like as far as space. And then the facilities committee would come back and talk about that a little bit more in depth. Because we don't know about money or any offer in that respect. There are lots of nuances. Like if, for instance, Lafarge asked for something from the district and we know we need 800,000 square yards of concrete. Oh, they're a company that makes concrete. They can do something for us, or they could build a building. I mean, it's nuanced when you're working with companies like that. We would want to discuss that at the Facilities Planning Committee, and it would have to come back here. As a reminder, the district can only dispose of any property by first a support of the board for a referendum around that, and then the public would vote on it. So we are months and months and months away from anything like that, and we've stressed throughout with the Facilities Planning Committee, we are not advocating for or against this proposal. Well, all we're just doing is our due diligence. Because if it's something that becomes beneficial to the district, maybe it's something the district would find they would entertain. And if it was not, if we felt as though the land usage was more important to us in our regular daily operations, then we'd say, we're not interested. But in the end, the board will make the decision. I want to gather enough information so that you feel as though you have that. All board members will be invited to wherever that presentation was. We're also going to broadcast the presentation. I forgot to mention that. So it'll be recorded, it'll be broadcast, it'll be in person at Peter B, because it's relevant at Peter B. And then if we were to send anything out to the public for a survey or something like that, we would actually attach that presentation so that they could hear it in context, because sometimes the paragraph is not sufficient to do that. What other suggestions do you have?
Brian, would it be strictly a one-way presentation, or would it be like a public hearing? Like, would
We
there
don't
be a
know.
question and answer?
Public test questions.
Okay.
Yeah. If it weren't the case, I would just have them record it. But we were planning about an hour, and for people to be able to ask questions in person. And we know that it's insufficient, even at September 1st or September 15th or whenever the second meeting is. If only 8 people can come or 12 people can come, and it affects 8,000, we need to have another layer for people to be able to give their input around that. So it would likely be a survey of some kind. And again, we would use the newspaper with an article inviting people to participate.
I think you'll have some people there.
Yeah, some people feel very strongly for and maybe against, yeah. No question. But at least we have some time now, a little bit of time, because of their presentation schedule. I think that's it.
Mr. Moore?
I have, I think we hit a couple of the items that I wanted to talk about. The one was with the transition events that are happening. Also, this is our I think it's been 2 years. We haven't had August Regents, so you approved August Regent proctoring and review. Students who need to take August Regents should have been contacted by their counselor at the end of June, but all of that specific information is coming out this week regarding things like transportation and what times they have to be here and reviews and all of those types of things. Also, with kindergarten and pre-K, we have an additional screening day over the summer for those who could not participate in screening in June?
Yeah.
And that will be August 24th for those who need to do that. Those letters should be coming from the building specifically, and the registrar will give those names to clerical, who will send out, work with teachers to make sure that that screening occurs. And the only other thing was tomorrow, and I can't believe how quickly it flew by, but tomorrow's the last day of summer programming. So our discovery camp that we had for grades 1 through 8, and then also our summer intensive. And today, because it was such a large project-based learning type of opportunity, students are kind of wrapping up their projects. So we had a Dutch cafe today, where they kind of included the 350-year anniversary of Coeymans with some culinary treats as well. So they were able to do that, and things like Shark Tank occurred at some of the classrooms. There was a recycling project, like a trash to treasure type of thing. So a lot of really great projects that we want to celebrate. So we'll put some things on the website regarding that. Mr. Tedford and Mr. Kerrigan really took on the high school summer intensive credit recovery. At this point, I think Mr. Tedford said 22 out of the 25 students received credit. So we're excited about that and hoping it puts them into a really strong path going into next year. And I think that's it.
I'm interested to talk about everything except for the 2 agenda
I was
items.
just
that
gonna
are
say,
being
I
raised.
was just gonna say, I just noticed that.
And I was going to say also, I was talking to a teacher who did the discovery camp, and she said, this is what school's supposed to be. I don't want it to end. The kids absolutely love it. They're so engaged, and it's helping them in a very different way. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
So, in any way,
Do you wanna go back to yours?
I'm afraid we do.
Okay.
Yes, can you rewind? So I wanted you to know that 2 weeks ago, we released our district-wide safety plan, which is required by New York State. It's open for a 30-day public comment. We also opened a survey around that safety plan. The safety plans that are presented for the district are very generic in nature, because building level safety plans are confidential. So it is just a very generic plan talking about our safety protocol overall and the steps in which we take when we're addressing issues around safety. So I wanted to remind you and the public that that survey is out there. I typed in safety plan on the website today. It came right up for a survey. And at our next board meeting, we will approve the safety plan. And members of the public are welcome to come to that meeting too and make comments if they would like to do so. But I just want to let you know that that's out there.
One question on that.
Yes, Mike.
I know that probably 2 months ago now, the governor signed some legislation requiring school boards to consider implementation of panic buttons, which is not a term that I like.
What's her name?
But it's a term that's in the law now.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether and that's effective upon signing, and I don't know whether the education department has put anything out to school districts as far as guidance,
Good question.
standards, but it's something that we should at least consider, since we're obligated to, and whether it makes sense or not, I don't know. It would require close coordination with local police departments, both Coeymans and the sheriff's department, but it is something that we need to at least consider, and I didn't see that in the plan when I looked.
So the language in the law says districts should consider, and you're right, whenever you use district with a capital D, this table,
Yeah.
when we convene our health and safety committee in the fall, we're going to have the discussion around that. And there are lots of ways in which the law allows that to happen. It could be physical buttons in every classroom, it could be buttons in a hall, it could be apps on phones, it could be buttons that people wear. There are lots of options around that.
Okay.
And it's not a mandate, you're exactly right, it's that schools consider that. So our health and safety committee will be talking about that, which is made up of district-wide representatives of our crisis response teams, district leadership, O&M, and people like that. But
Okay.
it was sensible, and then what we would do is we would bring a recommendation to the board.
Okay.
Brian, do we still have the apparatuses that were
We do.
presented to us a couple of years ago, that it was
Yeah.
through the sheriffs, right? What are those?
They're on every school bus, which Tina's talking about is our red button radios, we call them. There's the base radio, that looks like a CB, it's in our main offices and in some rooms, or like a cafeteria in Peterby and Becker. And then there are portable radios that look like walkie-talkies, they have a red button on them. When you push the red button, it immediately calls 911 dispatch, and they dispatch whether you respond or not.
Right.
And every bus has them. One of our discussions today around health and safety, we did a tabletop exercise with our risk management company, all the leaders did. And what we talked about is ensuring that students, staff are clear about where those locations are and what they're used for, that they understand how to use our PA system if necessary, because any one of us is capable of calling shelter in place or a lockdown when it's appropriate. Our building crisis teams have been very good about meeting out and dealing with issues that occur at the building level. We want to ensure that we have continuity and that every building is doing the same thing, because that's the best possible thing, and that we are in compliance. So the Health and Safety Committee will meet sometime in the first few weeks of school, and we're going to tackle all of that and ensure that our staff have the communication they
And
need.
having a plan and reviewing it annually is great. We're required to do it, but it's good practice also. But the biggest vulnerability is usually, the easy oversight, or taking the easy way, a door propped open, something like that. So in addition to doing this annual review, do we have a program in place where throughout the year reminders are sent out and we raise awareness and we have somebody checking doorways to make sure that a doorway propped open for one reason, which it shouldn't be, but probably happens,
Or that it works properly.
or that it works properly, the locks work properly? Is somebody actually checking that? And are we reminding all staff throughout the year, this is top of mind stuff that needs to run through everything we do on a daily basis?
The year opens with that reminder, and I would say that we're, with the instruction, with our new staff today, one of the new middle school assistant principals said, I think for the new teacher orientation, we should go over all the safety plans. Because you notice in that room, there's the card, the emergency card, and they're in every room in our building. And I said, we do it for all staff when they come back, because if we've been here 1 year or 25, we need the reminder. What I think we haven't done as meaningfully is, it needs to be ongoing. So we do the first of year reminder, and then our crisis response teams help to mediate what happens in the buildings. That's why I say the health and safety committee we're gonna up our game a little bit, that those reminders are coming on a more ongoing basis. We're sure that, think of it like, I went to Owens Corning a couple weeks ago, and on the gate it says 0 injuries in the last 362 days. Do you know how to get to that point? You do a reminder every interval of how to be safe. So we're going to up our game on that, and there'll be a schedule by which we're doing that.
Reminders are key, and actually having somebody who's tasked with doing spot checks around the perimeter of the building to make sure
We
that
talked
doors
about
are
that today as well.
closed, locked, operating correctly.
I will say that Mrs. Newbar did an excellent job of ensuring that with field day and the fun run, because she was very conscious of what was going on, and she seemed to be very on top of it.
Yep.
What's the communication tree if anybody walks by and sees the band door doesn't
Yeah.
latch properly? Do they email their building leadership? Is there a centralized OEM? How does that
Their building
communication go?
principal.
The
They
building
would talk to
principal.
their main office and their building principal.
Okay.
We talked about door sensors today too. They have their own limitations and benefits. The prop sensors, a door is unlatched for a certain amount of time, that goes off, and some schools have gone in that direction. We talked about it peripherally, but that's another thing we'll talk about in the safety meeting. There's, with the things that have happened in schools throughout the country, open doors are unquestionably high priority for people, high priority of concern for people. There's a board policy. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to go on to the next thing.
Yep.
So
Let's go.
we have a board policy, and I don't know if it came through for review. 3260. We may have reviewed it in the last couple of years.
Yep.
Specifically about booster clubs. And what it says is that booster clubs and other related organizations, such as alumni associations, may be created to promote community support and raise funds for specific school activities and programs. These groups must receive official board approval and may not discriminate on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, color, national origin, ethnic background, disability, religion, or other arbitrary criteria. We have organizations that work in our midst that do awesome work on behalf of our students and staff. PTO, PTA, PTSO, the new Arts Association, and our Sports Association. And I think there's a sixth that I'm missing. No, I think that's where I am right now. They do good work in and around our school community, and they serve our students and staff. They also use our facilities. We have a tiered list of costs for people using our facilities. We have been allowing all these groups to use our facilities, but they are not affiliated with the school. So and I haven't had a discussion with all these groups yet. I wanted you to know that I think that we should adhere to this, and these groups are worth the relationship with. That I wanted to communicate with them and officially recognize them, to have the board recognize them, so that we have a relationship, a trusting relationship, not that we don't already, but by recognizing affiliation, they have protection under us, and we have protection in them. The other things that it says is rules will be established to govern the activities of the booster clubs. All of them, to my knowledge, have their, what's it called? The charter or the operating principles. They have to if they're not for profit. They're required to submit them. The board further requires that financial records be maintained and made available. We are allowing these groups to operate on our campuses and raise money. On our campuses, in our beautiful facilities. And we're not required to look at them, but if they're required to be maintained, and they are if they're not for profit, they're required to be maintained anyway. They have to file at the end of the year. They be made available upon request, the board and/or for public inspection. Fundraising activities be approved in advance by the superintendent, and that's already the case. But I want you to know that I'm doing it in exception of this. They're not related to the district. So please protect me as well. And groups wishing to be made, to make a contribution adhere to the district's policy and regulations regarding the acceptance of gifts. And we've talked about that with staff quite a lot. In other words, as an example, this is a weird example, but I work with the STARS Volunteers. They are also a not-for-profit. And by law, as a not-for-profit, you can't give a gift card to a member of the board, because that would in turn mean that you're giving them a salary. So there's limitations as a not-for-profit what you are allowed to do, but our district is the same way. We are not allowed to, do some things financially. So it just says follow the district policies and regulations regarding the acceptance of gifts. I don't know of any issues that have occurred in any of these organizations. It's just reading it to you. So I think it's important that we recognize these groups. It'll allow me to sign off and say, sure, you want to do a chicken barbecue? Absolutely. You want to use our campus? No problem. You're an officially affiliated organization. And I don't have any problem with any of these groups. This isn't a sinister trick to say, let's clean house and get rid of them. I'm saying bring them in-house and acknowledge them. They're doing great work on behalf of our kids.
So will you have oversight, or will the board have oversight of these organizations? It gives us no oversight of them. They still remain their own independent organizations.
That is correct.
That have their own, like PTA has their own bylaws that we have to follow, similar to what you guys do. You have to have a quorum, you have to have certain committees, and you have to, present your budget and everything.
Okay. And I don't suggest that the board does. I don't think that we want to be in the business of progress monitoring
Right.
those groups.
So what is changing about the
Right.
relationship, I guess?
We
Because
have a
it
board
seems as though
policy
we
that
kind
says
of.
they are required to be affiliated with the school in order to operate here.
But what does affiliate mean?
Right.
Like
Why
what?
wouldn't we already be affiliated? We're not raising money for other schools.
In some way acknowledge at least the PTA, PTO, and the sports association. I remember specifically talking about that before, and somehow acknowledging. I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember either.
Like PTA has its own insurance too. Like we have our own liability
have to.
coverage and everything like that. We file our own taxes.
You'd be required to, yes.
Right.
It
We,
doesn't.
we already do those things though. The PTA does. I don't know about PTO.
Is it so that there can't be another
just-
one
yeah.
in competition of, or I'm not understanding what we're not
Well,
doing?
as an example, why is the PTO affiliated with school, but a not-for-profit field hockey camp? They want to use our field. It's a not-for-profit. Why can't they use it? They call themselves the RCS Field Hockey Camp. It's made up of RCS students who play field hockey in a not-for-profit agency. Why can't they use it for free or for whatever?
Are they not allowed to?
People shouldn't be using our facilities unless they've asked for permission to.
No, I
We-
understand that. I mean, are those things not being allowed? Like if the RCS field hockey team came to you, you wouldn't let them use it? Like I guess I'm not sure.
There's a price for people to use our
Okay.
facilities. They're asked to pay a fee.
Not for
And
nonprofits.
Yeah, see, that almost goes in line with what I was gonna talk about myself, to that point. We have to revisit our fee structure for all of these agencies. We're gonna start that process.
Okay.
The board, in our policy, just says we have to acknowledge those groups so that we know that they are the groups that are allowed to use our field at either our, I shouldn't say field, our facilities at either a discounted or different rate. Everybody comes in and they use our field.
It's a check and balance
And,
thing.
correct, and they use they feel, some of them don't even bother to get approval on the forms. They just fill one out and then all of a sudden will get it 3 weeks later.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, but that's a separate conversation from
Nope.
acknowledgement.
Correct, but we still have to acknowledge it formally, so we know as a board, all of these agencies, that they would be okay. We don't have a problem with PTO,
Right.
but it's just we were talked about doing it as part of the reorg meeting and making them.
It's fine, we would just
We
make a
approve
motion,
them.
we'd recognize them, that's all.
Why? That's it.
Correct.
List them out,
Okay, so
recognize
I guess
them.
I
It's just
wasn't
so we know
sure
that
what would be
who's
changing in the
using what and when.
relationship.
No.
Just an official
I'm
acknowledgement.
signing forms for these people
Right.
to do fundraisers in and around our campus, and how do I know that they are the affiliated
Okay.
organization?
So are we
Okay,
gonna
that's fair.
include like the youth soccer club and
Pee Wee
CYA.
wrestling.
Hudson
Yeah.
Valley.
all those
Lily.
kind of things too, besides just the
Yeah.
district?
Do you want?
Well, I don't know. I didn't know we were gonna do any of this.
Yeah.
I thought that we had already.
We didn't.
So how are you going to
Message
do you
that.
have enough?
I don't think you have to.
Do you know all the groups that you would need to acknowledge?
I would have to ask.
I mean,
Facilities
because you have,
previously, right?
you have the Boy Scouts too.
True.
Right. I know Girl Scouts has used.
Yeah, and here's the
They
tricky
might.
thing. And the policy says booster clubs or other organizations created to promote community support and to raise funds for specific school activities or programs.
Okay.
The soccer club isn't doing that. They're just running
Right.
has to be both of those conditions.
Okay.
Let's call it that. And we know that Sports Association, PTO, PTA, Arts, they are doing that. They're specifically, and for me, it's really about fundraising.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Right, so I think it's two different things. I think fundraising is one thing. I think the fee schedule is something else, because I think we've talked in the
Yeah, it
past
is.
about saying, for the youth organizations that support the youth of our district, that we want to allow access when we can with proper insurance,
Right. In
right?
an
For them
organized
to
manner.
use those things.
Yes, but I was thinking on an annualized basis, we have that huge list on the reorg. It's sensible that those groups just become part of the reorg, recognizing the affiliation of these groups, and then we're good. That's it for the year, if we make it part of
Okay.
that practice. But I wanted to have the conversation because I would like to do it now, not tonight, but to recognize those 5 that I know of that actively fundraise on our campuses in order to support programs.
So it's the PTA, PTO,
PTSO,
PTSO, Sports
Sports
Association, and Arts
Association.
Association.
and
And then you have-
RCS, Arts.
And then you have youth soccer.
But they don't make.
They don't do fundraising on our campus, do they?
Oh, they
Not-
charge people to come to their.
But not specifically given toward.
They're not raising
something.
money for programs here.
They don't charge to come to games.
You know,
No.
okay, okay.
They don't play their games unless they're theater age, right?
What Joanne's going to talk about is the use of our facilities. We're about to replace the filter in the pool, which is extremely expensive. It's 20 years old. I didn't know this. This was news to me, that a turf field has a life expectancy. I just figured,
10 years.
yeah. And then every foot that steps on it shortens it.
Well, what are we on?
No, 10 years is pretty standard. Doesn't normally shorten it. But what I would tell you is that the cost to replace the turf is basically the same thing for maintaining watering, cutting, all of the expense that you do. It's about the same thing.
So put it all together though, whether we have organizations, outside organizations or inside, using either one of them, we are expending a super valuable resource on the district's part. We need to reconsider our
Fee schedule?
fee schedule, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, I agree. I would tell you, for outside organizations, hit 'em up.
And we've been told that we are surprisingly affordable.
Cheap.
Surprisingly affordable, and
You
we
might
don't want to be that
Lansingburg
person.
and see, because they rent that facility out all the time, and they get good money for it.
Yep, so we'll just reconsider that.
Yep, yep, I'm just going to gather the information with the new athletic director and come back to this board and let you know that I think that we are not necessarily doing our facilities a service by not charging all groups. And I'm not saying to charge them an astronomical amount, but something that maybe offsets some of the costs. I could use baseball fields, and that we have the equivalent of, like, one of our people is there every single day. It's-
We're not talking about the groups that we just talked about for booster clubs,
But
okay?
when we did that price
Yep.
or whatever, we did talk about if there were other costs incurred, that they would be charged. If the lights are on the turf field, they would be paying for that.
They
If
are.
the additional
It's the-
custodian needed to be here, they
It's-
would be charged for that.
Right, it's a remediation. You're going out in the field and you're having to do new lines. It's after. We pay, while they're there, they're paying, yeah, like if a custodian has to be there, they are paying the custodian. It's the maintenance before and after that's also an issue. We're incurring costs that we're not being reimbursed for. And we know what other schools are charging and other colleges are charging in the area, and we're way under where we
Way
should be
under.
charging, whether it's grass or the turf.
Right, I agree. I think there should be a fee schedule that's reasonable. I do worry, again, when we compare ourselves to other places,
Right.
because a lot of our youth organizations will never be able to raise the money that you see at a Bethlehem or a Shen or some. We have extraordinary fields and grounds for our community, and that was part of the conversation when we invested in them, that maybe we were upgrading to a point that we couldn't necessarily recoup on, like other big districts can, but we still did it because we wanted our community to benefit from it. So I don't want us to outprice what our youth can afford to support.
And I don't think we're.
That's not what
All
our
right.
goal is.
Yeah, that's not the
at
groups we're
all.
thinking of. Like if, yes, youth baseball, that's our kids, that's not who we're talking about.
CYO, that sort of stuff.
We're saying like a local school or a college, their field's out of commission because they are
Yes.
Mhm.
doing improvements, and they come down here and play.
Oh, absolutely.
We are extremely affordable, or whatever Joanne said.
No, so we'll
Okay,
follow
now
up
I'm,
and.
now I'm done.
You're done? Oh, so,
No, and so we'll know, we'll follow up on the fee schedule. There's a couple things I wanted to update people on. We talked about the last meeting, the pool filter project. I want you to know that the pool is shut down right now through August 1st through August 12th. That's part of regular maintenance. The cover is being replaced during that process. Repairing cracked pool tiles, cracked bleacher seats also get done during that time frame. It's closed the same time frame every year. Right now, the swim team is slated to begin using the pool on August 22nd unless the work to replace the filter has started. We are still at the mercy of the timelines, the timeframes to get the products and the stuff we need. Kyle and Jen have been reaching out to other area schools to inquire about using their pools for practice if we need to. And again, we're also trying to coordinate with for transportation to those places. They are also, Kyle and Jen are working to schedule only away meets at the beginning of the season. Ambient Environmental will be on site to sample the room for the presence of asbestos, PCBs, etc. And again, it's the lead time for the filter equipment. It's 8 to 12 weeks. We're also trying to see if we can find one that is a pump motor that we can use in the interim if we need to get things moving quicker. I just want to give everybody an update on that. The Scoreboard Project, Shaker Flats, landscaping. Yep.
I know last meeting we talked about, concerns me that, does it have to be done? Like, if they're ready to start by August, does it have to be? And we started talking about that last meeting. I think maybe Bray or somebody said, well, what happens if we waited until March? You know, when we talk about looking into, if it can wait till March, you know, and
Filter won't last.
the-
I'll tell you right now.
or at least for the fall season, what is the expense? I mean, if we're talking about scheduling away meets, renting a pool somewhere else, busing kids back and forth, there's an expense to that. Is it really cost beneficial? I think we need to weigh that. If we can get through the fall meet before we pay all that money out, I think we have to know those figures. You know, say hopefully we start, you know, August. Well, we don't even know what it's going to cost to rent a pool somewhere else, or what the cost association is going to be busing people back and forth. I think we have to look at that before we make a decision on when you really should start. Do we have the information, what it would cost to rent a pool, what it would cost to bus the students back and forth? I mean, I think we need to know that before we,
One of the things we're also going to be up against is what's been approved through the state for an emergency project. I don't want to put it off, to be honest with you. We
Okay.
put it off now for a year and a half. If it goes, it's going to go, and we're just out of a pool. That's the end of it. We'll also incur the cost as well. We've
Okay.
also bid the work. So if we do that, and then there's no guarantee on the price, so now what we also approved this evening is a cost because things came in more expensive. So we originally thought it was going to be about 700, now it's about 720-something thousand to do that pool. We increased the limit to 800,000 to give us a little bit of a cushion.
okay?
If we don't do that, then again, we have to rebid it, and it's gonna end up costing us more money either way. No matter how you slice it, the filter needs to be replaced. I mean, I can get that price, but if the pool filter comes in between now and the next board meeting, then we're gonna be,
Okay.
What's the duration it takes to actually replace it from once they get it and they can start it?
I can find that out, that I don't know.
Because if it does start and displace one season, it may be up and running for the second season?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I did
Oh,
ask.
yeah, we're not talking about months,
We're
we're
not-
talking
right.
2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
I did
Okay.
ask. It's about 2 weeks to deconstruct because they built the room around the filter.
Correct.
They
That's
started
part of
some
it.
of the electrical work already.
Yes.
They're being very proactive in trying to prep it as much as they can. So when
So
the
that when
filter
it's
comes
ready,
off
it
the,
comes in, it's done.
it can be
will be a
scheduled and we get
disruption, though,
done.
I don't wanna lie, it will be a
Yeah.
disruption.
That makes sense.
No, that's a much
3 weeks.
rosier outcome
Outcome.
possible.
Yeah. So I guess the only concern is if, for example, the season starts and then the filter comes in.
If it was a year ago, I
filter
would
dies.
agree with you that we could put it
Yes.
off, but it's been something that we've been
Gotcha.
patching through welds that aren't holding up, so. Scoreboard project, if you notice that there's also been a problem with the scoreboard, we're not sure, we assume it was wind. Shaker Flats Landscaping will be handling the repair of the footings. The steel was ordered immediately back in June because we knew, again, that would be another lead time similar to the pool filter. They're actually now, I'm happy to report that the steel is on site. McBain Electric has disconnected the electrical service. They've marked out the work area. The work is slated to schedule to begin today or tomorrow. And assuming there's no significant groundwater, the reinstallation of the scoreboard should begin on Monday, August 8th. So that is a little bit ahead of schedule. We weren't assuming that it wasn't going to be ready until Labor Day, but now we are assuming that the scoreboard's going to be ready before mid-August.
Quick question, you said the electric's out, is that to the entire area
Yeah,
or just the
it's just the
scoreboard?
scoreboard. Yep.
Where is
So, and then we also filed that claim with our insurance carrier, so some of that will be off, the cost of that, some
Yep.
of that will be offset. That's it.
That's it, thank you. Right now we have no new business, so if
Well,
we have any.
I have one or two things I wanted to ask. First, I had a question about I think with the libraries, we were talking about a media specialist position. I looked through all I may have missed it. Has that position been created yet? Has it been filled?
The library media specialist position was already created prior. We had a library
Okay,
media
that's why I
specialist
couldn't
for
find it. Did we fill that yet?
And it was filled internally, so we wouldn't have to approve it at
Okay.
board level.
So that,
Somebody is slated to start in that position at
Correct.
the beginning of the school year?
Yes.
So what will the library look like at the elementary schools this school year?
BLTs are still looking at that right now. They're obviously we listen to our public, and what are some of the important things for them is book exchange for sure, and how are they supporting literacy within the classroom. So I know at Peter B they've talked about actual library type of classes. At A.W. Becker, teachers overwhelmingly would rather have the book exchanges and the support. So they're really looking at a building specific.
What is the book exchange? Is that borrowing books from
Borrowing
the
books,
library
yeah,
and bringing
yeah.
them home?
So maybe we can update Fred on that, maybe at one of the upcoming meetings leading into the year so
Sure.
that people are aware.
Yep. What we'll try to do as well is we'll try to have, when principals are sending out welcome letters, we'll add that as part of the welcome letter from the library's media specialist.
So is there a media specialist at each library, or there's one that splits time between the two?
There'll be one that's split between the two. So
Okay.
elementary, through New York State education requirements, elementary schools aren't required to have a library. Middle schools are required to have 0.5, and high schools are required to have a full-time library. So what we're doing is through some of our reorganization, that library media specialist will also be, as part of the media specialist piece, will also be supporting instructional technology within those buildings as well. And we created the roles and responsibilities around that when we posted the position.
and then, so in regards to cell phones, there is a lot that I've read going on, even locally, Schoharie, nationally, on cell phone policies in school. I know we have an electronic policy in the code of conduct, but it's, to be honest with you, from what I see, it's very, very bland. I think in listening to public leading up to things, we may want to look at implementing or drawing up a cell phone policy, because I think that, especially with the law that, Governor Hochul signed something in June in regards to, I don't know it inside and out, but someone makes a threat without even, carrying it through. And I know, Dr. Belli, you were talking about we have to figure out how to protect our students, and inform them. I think that there has to be a responsible cell phone usage that we need to teach kids. And it has to progress. Maybe kids in the elementary school, there's maybe no reason to have it. In the middle school, once you get to high school and you're a kid, a 13, 14, 15-year-old, they know they shouldn't be on their phone in the classroom. And I don't think it's the teacher's responsibility with everything that's going on to have to keep on reminding them. So I think that if we come up with a policy that we can adopt and get it out there to the parents so everyone's aware of it before school starts, whatever it may be, we can kind of set that precedent in going forward. You know, video recording and things like that. You know, there's a lot of things that are illegal, and kids don't know that. And I think that we need to help them and educate them on that, so they don't get into a situation, especially with aspects of this new law, where they could be in trouble. So I think it would be beneficial if whether we do it in committee, in policy committee, or whether an ad hoc committee where the board does it, I think it would be a good thing to do. Because, you know, just an electronic policy makes sense, but specific to cell phones on what it would look like. I don't know what anyone else's thoughts are on
I
that.
think we would want to involve the community within any policy that's created, because people are with different backgrounds are going to have different thoughts on things, and I wouldn't
Correct.
want them to think that we created a policy without input from, you know, from them.
And we have to have, what, 2 readings of anything that's proposed?
Yes, right,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Two separate meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking
Which
something
I
that we
know.
could, you know, look into. Schoharie did away totally with cell phones, just came out. They're making the students put them in a pouch. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with
I
that.
think the only thing you can do is make a very generic policy that says they have to be used appropriately. I mean, to make it any more specific, especially when you get to the middle school and high school age, is tough, because a lot of times they're used for educational purposes. So,
Well, I think you make that clear, a little clearer is what I mean by that. No matter what you do with the community, there's some people that are not going to be happy, and there's other people that are going to be happy. But it also sets the precedent beforehand. You know, for teachers, I mean, when you just like anything progressive, a middle schooler has it out, they may get more chances. You know, I put it away, it's not appropriate. By the time you get to high school and you have a high school, you know, a teacher teaching a class and a 14-year-old, you know, it's, hey, put the phone away, put the phone. I mean, I know in the progressive discipline, but how many times a 14-year-old knows you don't answer your phone in the middle of class? And, you know, the teacher should be able to write that person up and send it there, and the
They can.
progress. I know, but
That's
the
all in the code of conduct. They
I know
can.
it's in the code of conduct, but I think that how many people go online and look at that code of conduct with those check boxes and things like that? It's
Otherwise, you're
it should-
negating everything the code
Yeah.
of conduct stands for.
I'm not saying negating it. I'm saying that there's a lot of districts are creating separate cell phone policies because they're causing a problem in school, not just in the classroom, but in other areas.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago that this board was presenting not wanting the students to have to use their own cell phones
Yes.
in the engagement of the classroom, which a lot of them were using. So, you know, I think that there's been a progression. There's been an introduction of more provided electronics for them to use, which is a more appropriate way to do it. But you know, I think that that's something the committee could look at and make recommendations. I don't know if we've ever explored creating policy off the floor.
No, I agree, but I'm just pointing it out that a lot of schools are doing it right now.
Well, I think that falls, I think we should keep it under new business,
Yeah.
right? And it should be
I was gonna say, we
talked
can
about
move
and
that.
progressed through, you know, and maybe report out where we are. Because I think it's worthwhile taking a look at.
Sue, will you add that? Thank you.
Can we bring what that appropriate current policy is, just so that we
Yep.
have an awareness?
Yeah, the code of conduct, I guess we could bring
It's in the code
that
of
to the next
conduct.
meeting.
You know, basically it has the level 1, level 2 responses and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
I just think with there's got to be some way, and I don't know the impact of the new law and what it's going to be to help the students out, because it's a big concern. I mean, they could be posting something on Snapchat in between classes, doing something that it could get them in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
Especially with the signing of this new law. And I think we have to do something. I don't know what that something is, but I think we have to look into it.
Yeah, we have to help the teachers out too, and have clear ground rules on when phones should be out in the classroom. If it's in support of educational activities, that's one thing, if it's authorized by the teacher. Otherwise, I don't see a reason why phones should be out and used in the classroom. And those rules need to be clear. They need to be broadcast to everybody, students, parents, teachers, and they need to be enforced.
I think there needs to be some allowance for children to use them in the middle school days when 10 period buses are canceled. My daughter texts me and says, "Can you pick me up?" And I say yes, and that's the extent of the
Absolutely.
conversation.
Absolutely.
And I trust her that she's responsible because I've never had a teacher complain that she's used it inappropriately.
With the approval of the teacher?
Right, and
May I
oftentimes
make a
though,
quick-
there have been times where teachers have told her no, and she's asking simply for that purpose, and that frustrates me as a parent because she's trying to be responsible and address a situation that she knows that she wants to stay, and will she be able to get the transportation? And a teacher, in my opinion, should be saying yes to that,
And that would
if
be part
asked
of the-
honestly.
That would be part of the clear rules that are communicated. When it is appropriate and inappropriate to have a phone,
Mhm.
perhaps it's on the desk, in hand, in use, whatever it may be, earbuds in ears, whether something is playing or not. There's a lot of ground here that needs to be addressed. Ed's absolutely right. There's the student perspective to make sure students are protected and not putting themselves at risk that they don't even appreciate at the age. These are advanced devices for the age and maturity level of some of these students, but also it's a major disruption factor for teachers in the classroom, and we need to make sure that teachers are supported too in confronting challenges that honestly didn't exist 10 years ago, but they do today, quite significantly.
So I kind of hear two different issues going on. One is the appropriate use of electronics and the dangers that they could present if you're not mature enough and educated enough. So I think we've had a lot of conversation about providing that kind of social awareness of what is safe and what is not okay, and that's something that's always ongoing, so that when they're out of our purview, when they're outside the district, they have a better awareness of what to do when they're sitting at home with their computers and their iPhones and their every other electronic device that can take a picture or send a message. But then you're also addressing something that's code of conduct specific and distraction based in the classroom. So it's not as clear cut as just a single policy. It sounds like there's kind of a weaving of where we can have policies that make sense and are reasonable, but then also the education to help them become better citizens of that information outside of school. So I know we've had a lot of dialogue about that, and I think there's always room for policy to bring that up in their committees and kind of, should we look at this? Should we open it up? Should we make some recommendations? But I think it has to be meaningful and make sure that we give it the thought that's necessary to meet what it is that we find the challenges to be.
We had this exact same conversation as leaders today. And all sides represented. Seriously, support of the teachers and other staff and the disruptions in the classroom, and our responsibility to educate kids so they don't get themselves in a mess that they can't escape from. We as adults are challenged by that too, in our own usage. So it's a great conversation.
Right, did we have a nighttime forum about social media and uses a few years ago?
I remember something to
Yeah.
that effect.
That might be another
Something we
something
could do up again, maybe.
to blow the dust off of.
I have one more quick thing, I'm so sorry. Board policy in response to public concerns, things brought to the board at the meeting. I know we may have talked about this before, but I've looked at other districts' policies on website, and I found Skodak specifically actually in their agenda, they have an agenda item of board policies response to the public. So when the public comes with a concern and we say, we'll take it under advisement and get back to you, they actually, I don't know what their policy is, but they have a policy built in on how they come back and readdress the item to the public. They do it at their board, at their board meeting. Maybe it's on the RCS app, maybe it's something like that. Because when we say we'll take it under advisement, and then sometimes time goes by and no one gets a response, I think that hurts with the communication to the public. They don't feel like the board is listening. It have to have some way, if we address it, whether it's an open or if it's an executive session object, that we can make sure we follow up next meeting or the meeting after that and get back to them, a way to present that. I think we have to come up with whatever that policy looks like. I think it would be a good idea to advance that.
I don't think that's a policy
Yeah,
thing.
it's not a
procedure.
yes.
Like, we need to know, and we've been over this many
yeah.
times
Yeah.
about not responding right then. You know, we've talked with the lawyer about it, and he absolutely suggests that we do not respond right then because But we
Right.
do, we've said over and over, we want to make sure everybody's gotten back to, we want to make sure it's public, we want everybody to know.
So could that be something, maybe Brian, in your, when it gets to you, you could say, hey, we had 4 questions last time. And I don't know how in-depth you want to go of just saying, and I've gotten back to those individuals with answers to those questions. You know, and if it's stuff that you can make public, right? And that's a kind of a closure
Right.
for that.
Maybe right before the petitions. It's kind of like the follow-up to it, and then you open it up for anything new.
Whatever, but it's an opportunity to kind of tie that off at that point in time.
And that might cut down us hearing the same things over and
Over.
over.
Yeah, well, that's policy and procedure, however
Yeah.
you want to look at it. I just think would be a good idea.
And we have presented that and discussed that, and
Yeah.
sometimes there's been reasonable ways at the next meeting to do that. Sometimes it's ongoing, and it wouldn't be appropriate to kind of give you half of a story, but at least acknowledge that it was, and there have been 3 or 4 steps taken, and we're hoping to close this in that subsequent month, you know. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not anything new. Every one of us has brought that forward. We just have to figure out the right way to deliver it. Because in the moment,
Right.
no one of us can speak on behalf
Oh,
of the
no,
district.
I'm not saying, I'm not suggesting that when someone asks a question, we answer it in the meeting. That's not what I was
I
suggesting.
don't think that's what you're saying with Skodak. You were
Right.
saying that they bring it back.
They
maybe the
bring it
next
back, like.
maybe the next meeting.
They have something like that. So, like you said, it's a discussion that the board, even before I was here, you've had multiple times. But the thing is, the discussions become discussions, and more time frame just, keeps going out. So I think that if we can figure out a way, and it's a working way, maybe you start like the way Bill said with Dr. Belli, maybe that if we find out that, hey, that's not really working, okay. But then we can move to something else. But I think we have to,
I think some of the challenges, and I don't want to belabor this because I know we're getting later, but, sometimes you have people that just want to give you a notification. This has happened, I'm not happy about it, here you go. You may not have a resolution to that. You may just have a follow-up conversation.
Right.
And sometimes it's so uniquely specific to a person, it may not be the responsible way to say, I spoke to Mrs. So-and-so and provided her this relief. So, I mean, there's a lot of nuances, and
I
that's
agree.
where we kind of get tripped up sometimes, that it seems like a much easier thing to deliver in a timely fashion, but often it's we have to agree to disagree kind of thing, and that doesn't always deliver well. It just sometimes adds fuel to the fire, and it's never easy. I definitely wouldn't want to be in those shoes, and I respect that they have to have those communications sometimes, but we can do better in many of the cases. So hopefully we can move that way in the future.
I have a question on old business, if it's allowed.
No, I was just gonna kind of move, we're in new and old, so go
Yeah.
ahead.
The A.W. Becker playground appears on there. What is the status with that? Is there any hope that it's going to be repaired or replaced or altered in any fashion? That one slide has been broken for an entire school year at least.
I'm looking
And
down
was
here.
told, the PTA was told it was going to be replaced, and it hasn't been. And the PTA's funds that they would like to expend, and I know there was a committee at one point that was formed, and they were told they needed to get quotes and stuff, and I just wondered if there was any update on that or any information, because
We'll include it in what we put on our website. Remember, it said we would create something with the scope of work for the upcoming project and anything that's local work, so that we can certainly give people a timeline of what is happening.
is that slated to be part of any of the work that's coming up?
Parts of it. The irrigation for Peter B. is part of the project that will be happening in summer of 2023.
Well, this
That's
is
not the A.W. Becker playground.
Becker-
No, no,
Becker-
I know, and there's been a A.W. Becker committee that's been meeting on playground. So, like I said.
Which I was on that committee,
Yeah.
and we haven't been able to meet because we were told we needed to get quotes, so I was just curious how.
Quotes are in,
Okay,
yeah.
and will that be something that is, you say will be on the website as something is available, will it be
Yeah, it's
slotted
sensible.
as for
Yep.
its priority level?
The work that will be done both through local monies and through the project will be included in that, whatever we put on the website. I don't know specifically timeline or replacing the slide or what the thoughts are.
A year seems like a long time for a slide to be broken on a playground that kids are playing on, to me.
It absolutely does.
I mean, the funds are available and being offered, and if at least we could fix the slide. I mean, it doesn't seem like a great idea that something is also open to the community as a broken piece for a full year.
So is that a project that requires any outside approvals?
No.
So
The
that
first
was
time
done.
that was brought
You
to my
can purchase it
attention
and
was
donate it.
at that podium. So
When was that? 'Cause
in the spring, when someone came up and talked about the playground, which had already been a year, so.
So does the building and grounds committee not tell you when things like that are broken? If you're saying like the building principal is responsible for conveying information about a door being broken, shouldn't they also be conveying to you that a piece of equipment is broken?
I can't tell you the history on it, Jenny. I don't know why we are where we are.
Okay.
It's not good, though. It's not
But
good.
it's also
that-
something that the community sees and goes and uses, and they look at the playground, it's like,
I don't
what's
like
going
it.
on here?
The most front-facing things that we have as facilities need to be the best maintained. We
So-
talked about our athletic fields, but the fact that that sat like that for a year is not acceptable. I
So
agree
if
with you.
they're
So-
willing and they have the money, why, I mean, what's the
Because
reasoning for not getting
we
this
wouldn't
done?
want to, well, today, right this second, we don't want you to spend $1,000 on a slide on a piece of equipment that's going to be torn down maybe in a month. That's nonsensical. So between when we were notified and now, that whole thing with the committee came together and had a discussion about large scale, concrete work, where we might want it to be moved, what type of equipment there would be, receiving the quotes, making decisions about the overall project, rather than just replacing the slide. I mean, it became a bigger.
This is
So
something
when
that's
are you
not
saying that it's
repairable
gonna be
by
on
our
the-
own people that,
I don't know.
I don't know
It's
either.
cracked.
The slide is physically not there.
well, it's not there.
I don't believe so.
Oh, I haven't been to that
I'll go take
playground in years,
pictures.
but.
No,
But
you don't need to do that, but what I would want to follow up, and, it's funny because that should have never happened. So when there's something that's broken or in disrepair, and Bill Schramm and I and the principals have talked about, there's gotta be a process where the person, I would say an O&M, a custodial person would say, hey, the slide's broken. They gotta go out there and look at it and we have to do a physical inventory every year of what needs to be done. If, I am meeting with,
Is that the
Deb
lead
and-
custodian that would do that?
Yes, I
Okay.
am meeting with Deb and Bill tomorrow because part of what derailed, I wouldn't say derailed, but postponed or delayed some of that work is there was an original discussion that they were gonna repave everything and actually physically move it. And the two quotes that came in, one was $300,000, one was 88, so there was a huge disparity.
Okay.
So we're gonna meet there should be some definite changes and improvements to that playground soon. Again, there'll be a delay from when things are ordered, but also to Dr. Bailey's point, it wouldn't be nonsensical to replace something if that piece of equipment. So we'll be able to give a much greater update the next time we meet.
so when will this be available on the website? Like, what is the time frame for
We could do
potentially
some
making
update
this
tomorrow.
playground
Just said next week we would have,
salvageable?
Next week.
I mean, because it's a fairly unsafe playground.
Mhm.
From what I hear, there are injuries and.
And there should be.
I mean, that kinda opens you
There
up
should
to
be
some
work orders
lawsuits.
already in the system. The
But
second that
that's what
slide
I
is
don't
broken-
understand. If it's been broken for this
Oh,
long,
it's
why
been-
was it not noticed or
There was
addressed?
tape on it to not use it for a while too.
Correct, but
Yep.
how many children are going to
No,
abide by
no,
that on a
I'm
consistent
not,
basis?
I'm just saying.
Right,
It-
I'm also saying though, is that you've got 5-year-olds who have impulse control issues. I mean,
But what I'm referencing is, are there not work orders in from a year ago saying this is broken? Because if there aren't, somebody's not doing their job.
correct.
No, I think that there was, and I think the reason it didn't get, because they wasn't know what was gonna be replaced and what wasn't. So I'll find out more information. I don't have any other information, but we can.
Can you read that? Okay.
it's not okay for it to be broken for a year. As soon as we found out at the podium there, we formed a committee.
Yep.
The committee to have the discussions about it. And the PTA has been consistently pushing to have things
Yep.
corrected. You've been championing it.
But
and-
the committee was formed in September. Like Vicki Dixon put it together, a committee, and we had approval, and I was part of it, and there was a meeting, and people were looking at what different pieces of equipment could be replaced, and getting information on how much those pieces of equipment would cost, so that the PTA could fundraise for that. And one of our biggest fundraisers was in June, and we could have allocated funds to go to it if we had like some kind of over approval or whatever it was that was needed.
Was it a PTA committee or was it a
It
committee?
was a PTA committee that had approval from what she said. I don't know
from-
exactly
from
what she.
whom? That's the part.
I can ask her, I don't know specifically, but we were allowed to meet, and the purpose of the meetings was to figure out which pieces of equipment could be replaced or just what would make sense for the district and for the children to use, and to make it more inclusive for all children of differing abilities, because it's not terribly friendly to those who may not move the same way as others or need different input than others. It needs to be inclusive of all children, and it's not really usable by all children at the school.
The first I knew about, we need to correct it now. So we'll let people know what the timeline is around that.
No offense, but you shouldn't necessarily need to know
No.
Right.
when a slide's getting fixed in the playground.
Absolutely.
That's, you're a superintendent, that's not,
Right.
that should all be done, and then you should look and go, oh, nice job, guys.
Great, but why was it not communicated to someone to be
What I-
fixed, is I guess my
Well,
concern too.
what I'm-
And it goes
Like,
back to
your point.
originally when I said, what's the communication tree? Like, if someone's gonna
Right.
find something, how does it get to the next level and then follow it up beyond that?
What I was saying is, at that podium is when I found out the PTA had a committee where they were trying to build something on our property. That's when I said we need a committee with staff members from the district on the committee so that they could help forge ahead in a way that could produce, because there could be questions about whether state ed needed to be evolved, depending on what it was. If it was a structure that they wanted to build as well, there's ancillary things. Whether it is what the quotes are because we have state contract, and sometimes it's beneficial, whether we wanted to move it. I can tell you our director of O&M, unaware that that was going on, had planned to repave the entire area, because that part we were well aware of, that the ripples on there are dangerous. So we had already planned to do something that was averse to what the other committee was working on, thinking about moving it to a different area to make it more accessible and things like that. So at that time, we brought two committees together to try and make sure that we were absolutely moving in concert and full knowledge. But I agree, I mean, Ray's right, I shouldn't know whether the slide is cracked, but it is not okay that it's sat broken for a year. Something was broken in the process, and we will find out why. Because whether it is a slide on the playground or the front door of the building, if it's not working, there needs to be a work order, it needs to be repaired.
I would agree that you don't need to know everything, but if we're going back to the point of safety and the point of contact person is Mrs. Newbar, and she's supposed to be informed that door isn't working, shouldn't she also be informed that I guess the trail seems like it was dropped. Not through fault of you necessarily, not that you need to know every slide being replaced, but it seems like it should have been someone else aware.
Are there meeting minutes when your BLTs and each of those committees meet to discuss things? So if there was something that was brought to a principal's attention and they needed the whole BLT to weigh in or brainstorm or do whatever it is, at that point there's official records of communication about things that are their priorities, or who's following up on what, or what is moved up from a concern to, whatever the higher level is. Because I think this kind of still speaks to that whole communication. There's internal, there's external, and then there's the things that fall in between. So I think if we can crystallize what our expectations are across all, and that, everybody who steps on the grounds is responsible for identifying things, that's great. Then give it to this one, and then this one will bring it to this one. And that way we can reverse engineer when we say nobody knew something, that somebody knew something somewhere, and how did we miss that communication?
So just to be clear on next steps moving forward with the playground. So the two committees came together and communicated about the different projects they were looking at. Did they come up with a plan for what's going to be done with the playground as far as paving and new equipment?
The second quote came in not that long ago. The huge quote came in first, and a lower quote came in second.
Okay.
The committee has to meet, is scheduled to meet one more time. I think for some reason it got canceled or delayed. Because when they met last time, they had the discussion about whether it was going to be moved to the middle of the playground, the middle of the concrete area toward the front. They need to meet again. They need to know that some of the costs that they had discussed were irreconcilable. They can't possibly be done. It would quadruple the cost of the work. And not really capitalize on the money that the PTA is prepared to spend and what the district can spend. So they need to meet again and finalize. where it's gonna be.
What is the quote for?
Yeah, who authorized there to be quotes gathered?
Is this a quote for pavement? Is this a quote for pavement
No.
and playground equipment?
We already have a quote for pavement, we know
Okay.
exactly what that'll cost.
Okay.
The quote was for the purchase and installation of the playground
actual
equipment,
equipment.
that the PTA met and made decisions on what was,
Okay.
what they thought was appropriate.
So the pavement is occurring no matter what, there's a
Nope,
definite plan for
nope,
that?
I'm not gonna say that. Bill Schramm, myself, and Deb Newbart are gonna meet tomorrow.
Okay.
She's gonna identify what areas she does or does not wanna be paved. We'll make a decision based on that, on what we can, then the committee will reconvene about where and what can be done with the costs associated, because the district does have some funds to assign it for it as well.
Okay.
But-
Will where she decides to have repaved take into consideration whatever playground structure codes you've
Yeah,
already
because
gotten?
that could drastically alter the cost.
Well, so, but the
Drastic.
playground quotes that you have might be obsolete if she is choosing to pave different areas?
I'm gonna meet with her. I haven't met with her. I was not part of the first committee, so I will talk with her and
Okay.
I'll follow up.
Jenny, what it's gonna be is, and we're way in the weeds on this, because all of us are, your first priority, I'm third, Joanna's third, Mike's asking good questions, is that the proposal to move the playground to the center of the blacktop would quadruple the cost of the project. By just removing an area of blacktop and only repaving a portion, because there's much more, actually, we don't want blacktop at all, because that's one of the things that
Okay.
causes injuries. They're talking about alternative services, that's what our architect is investigating. But even by removing some of the current area that's blacktopped and putting the playground there is easier and more cost-effective, perhaps, than putting it back in the back where the existing stuff is.
I don't think that it matters where the playground is, as long as it's safe and usable for children. To me, that would be the top priority, is that it's functional
Yeah.
and allows the children to burn off that energy after they eat lunch before they go back to the classroom, or
Yeah.
used as a reward for a class that's done a really great job all day.
So the next step will be your meeting tomorrow, and then there'll be another communication or some
A
kind of
meeting
committee out
with
to
the,
the.
a meeting with the
PTA.
PTA and the larger group.
Okay.
If these meetings had started in September of last year, we wouldn't be in the same position we are now. And I cannot explain to you why the committee met what they believe with authorization to have meetings and plan a playground without the director of O&M or without the knowledge, the people who could ensure that it was in compliance, to ensure that the paving was done around it, ensure that the district could contribute or not contribute. I don't know why it took so long to do that, to get the connection of the two things. When we did do that in the spring, we're making progress on design and implementation.
Does anybody else have anything for?
The bus, I think last meeting, Joanne, you said you were gonna have update on the bus, the stop sign cameras?
Yeah, they cannot come in this meeting. They can either come in the next meeting or on the 14th of September.
Okay.
So, one of those days conflicts with me, so I'm working on it.
Okay.
We can do it without you.
Good, then it'll be the 14th, I'll insist.
Yeah, I think the sooner the better, so we can put it to bed.
Okay,
So
24th it'll be.
The 24th.
Yep.
Okay. 8:24.
Yep. Sounds good.
Alrighty, so we do not have any BOE committee reports, except for, actually, I'm sorry, 12.1 CNI. We kinda already
Yeah, we
talked
went out of
about it.
order.
Okay. There's no policy or adoption review, no hearings or petitions, and upcoming events, our next meeting is August 24th. I don't think there's anything else.
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
So you just
Mr.
need to sign a
McFerrin.
form, right?
Oh, go ahead.
You just need us to sign a form before we leave?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
usually
but that's
the
separate
board,
from
that's
this.
separate from that, yep. Mr. McFerrin, and I think I saw Mr. Engel. Meeting adjourned.
Aye.